In 64 AD, Emperor Nero hosted a party. His garden blazed, lit by human torches. Christians covered in pitch nailed to crosses. One man, face a mask of melting tar, still tried to scream. The air thickened with jasmine and burning human fat. This was not war, this was decoration. How could Rome, the pinnacle of civilization, allow this? What if their actions weren't madness, but a terrifyingly familiar logic? What hidden truth made leaving feel like the safer option? What does it say about your own capacity for complicity? To understand what happens next, you need to picture the Roman Empire not as the marble ruins you've seen, but as a living, breathing political organism, one still new and deeply insecure. When Augustus, the first emperor, died in 14 AD, the position he created was a paradox, a tightrope walk between autocracy and the illusion of a republic. He called himself princeps, or first citizen, a deliberate performance of humility. He knew that the Roman elite, the Senate, would tolerate a king only if he never called himself one. You must hold this fact in your mind. The emperor's power was a constant, fragile negotiation. The men who followed Augustus would tear that negotiation to pieces, not by accident, but by design. We will focus on 4 of them, 4 names that have become shorthand for tyranny: Caligula, Nero, Commodus, and Elagabalus. Their reigns span nearly 2 centuries, from the heart of the Julio-Claudian dynasty to the chaos of the Severan. They inherited a system built on a lie, the lie that one man could hold the power of a god while pretending to be a mere citizen. They were the ones who decided to stop pretending. If you had lived in their time, you would have seen the mask of civilization slip, revealing the skull beneath. They ruled from the Palatine Hill, a place whose very air was thick with the metallic tang of power and paranoia, where every whisper could be a death sentence and every smile could hide a dagger. This is the stage where our story takes place, a world where absolute power was given to men who were, in the end, just men. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. But the real danger wasn't the men themselves, but what their actions revealed about the system that enabled them. And this is where the story stops making sense. The sickness begins subtly, like a fever that has not yet broken. In 37 AD, the young emperor Gaius, known to you as Caligula, is the darling of Rome. He is charismatic, generous, the son of the beloved general Germanicus. Then an illness strikes. He recovers, but the man who returns is not the same. You would have first noticed it in the small things, the casual cruelties. He reportedly forced senators, the most powerful men in the empire, to run for miles beside his chariot as a form of sport. He began to refer to himself as a living god, ordering a bridge built from his palace to the temple of Jupiter so he could consult with the deity as an equal. The dread solidifies when you witness him in the arena. He is not watching the games, he is part of them. During a shortage of criminals to be fed to the beasts, Caligula reportedly looked at a section of the crowd and, with a lazy gesture, ordered the guards to seize the entire block of spectators and throw them into the ring instead. There is no reason, there is no trial. There is only his will. The air in the Colosseum, once smelling of sweat and sawdust, now carries the iron-rich scent of innocent blood. This isn't politics. This is a declaration that human life has no value beyond his personal amusement. But there's a detail buried in the record that nobody flagged at the time. The pattern continues, escalating with the next generation. Nero takes the throne in 54 AD. For 5 years, he rules well, guided by his tutor, the philosopher Seneca. But you, as a witness in his court, would feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. The first tremor is the death of his stepbrother, Britannicus. At a family dinner, the boy is given poisoned wine. He chokes, collapses, and dies right there at the table. Nero watches, his face impassive, and explains to the horrified guests that the boy was merely having an epileptic seizure. You would have felt the chill in that room, the unspoken understanding that the emperor was now a murderer. and everyone present was now an accomplice. From there, the darkness consumes his own family. He decides his mother, Agrippina, the woman who schemed and killed to put him on the throne, has too much influence. He doesn't just have her killed. He tries to make it an artistic spectacle. He designs a special boat, engineered to collapse and sink, and sends her on a nighttime cruise. When he hears she survived by swimming to shore, he abandons subtlety and sends assassins to her villa to finish the job. They find her in her bedroom, and she reportedly pointed to her womb and told them to strike there first, the womb that bore such a monstrous son. What nobody realized yet, not even the people involved, was that this had already been decided. Decades later, the cycle repeats, but this time as pure farce. Commodus, the son of the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius, becomes emperor in 180 AD. He has no interest in governing. His only obsession is the gladiatorial arena. He sees himself as the reincarnation of Hercules. If you had been in the Colosseum then, you would have been forced to stand and cheer as the emperor of the known world, dressed in a lion's skin, enters the sand. But his opponents are not worthy warriors. They are terrified captives with their weapons blunted or amputees tied to posts so he can club them to death. You would have watched him kill over 100 bears in a single morning with a bow, a pathetic display of power against helpless animals. He renamed Rome *, Colonia Commodiana *. He renamed the months of the year after himself. The fear under Caligula and Nero was the fear of a predator. The fear under Commodus is the fear of a spoiled child who has been given the world as his toy, and is now gleefully pulling its wings off. The final degradation arrives with Elagabalus in 218 AD, a teenage Syrian priest who becomes emperor. He brought his god, a conical black stone, to Rome, and built a lavish temple for it on the Palatine Hill. He then reportedly forced the most sacred relics of Roman religion, including the Vestal fire, to be moved into his temple as servants to this new alien deity. He married a Vestal virgin, a sacrilege so profound it was believed to threaten the very existence of Rome. He appointed his chariot driver as head of the city guard, and his hairdresser as head of the grain supply. He held lotteries where the prizes were either a grand villa or a handful of dead flies. To be in his court was to live in a world turned upside down, a fever dream where tradition, honor, and reason had been replaced by the whims of a boy god who cared for nothing but his own sensations. Each of these reigns follows the same horrifying arc: the erosion of norms, the privatization of the state for personal pleasure, and the transformation of the emperor from a public servant to a public predator. But these individual acts of depravity, as shocking as they are not the real story. The real horror is not what these men did, but what the most powerful institution in Rome did while they were doing it. And the reason nobody stopped it is stranger than anything that came before. But there's a detail buried in the record that nobody flagged at the time. Focus on one man, Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He is one of the greatest philosophical minds in Roman history, a Stoic who wrote brilliant essays on mercy, on tranquility, on living a virtuous life. For years he was Nero's tutor and closest advisor, the voice of reason that tempered the young emperor's worst impulses. He tried to steer the ship of state, even as its captain was descending into madness. Think about the person you trust most in the world, the one whose advice you would always take. For a time, Seneca was that person to Nero. But in 65 AD, that trust evaporates. Implicated in a conspiracy to assassinate the emperor, Seneca receives the message he has long been dreading. It is not an arrest warrant. It is not a summons to court. It is a simple command from his former student: you are to die. Nero does not grant him the dignity of a swift execution. He forces Seneca to take his own life. You must imagine the scene. Seneca is at home with his wife and his friends. He calmly slits his wrists, his ankles, and his knees, but because of his old age and meager diet, the blood flows too slowly. He dictated his final philosophical thoughts to a scribe, his voice steady even as his life drains away. To hasten the end, he is carried into a steam bath, where he finally suffocates. This was not just a murder. It was the murder of wisdom by power. It was the moment the Roman system declared that reason, philosophy, and morality were no longer welcome. They were weaknesses to be purged. What they found when they finally opened the door changed everything, and not in the way anyone expected. Here's where it gets worse. Now, reframe everything you have just heard. These reigns of terror did not end naturally. Caligula was stabbed to death in a secluded palace corridor. Commodus was strangled in his bath by his personal wrestling trainer. Elagabalus was cut down in a latrine by his own guards. On the surface, these seem like righteous, if brutal, acts of justice. But this was not chaos. It was a system, and the system had a name: the Praetorian Guard. They were the emperor's personal bodyguards, the elite military unit stationed in Rome, sworn to protect his life above all else. Yet they were the ones who held the knife. This wasn't about politics. The Praetorian Guard killed Caligula not for his tyranny, but because he had insulted one of their officers, Cassius Chariot. They then found his terrified uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain and proclaimed him the new emperor on the spot. They killed Elagabalus and installed his cousin Severus Alexander, because Elagabalus's grandmother, the true power behind the throne, had reportedly paid them to switch her allegiances. Commodus's assassination was orchestrated by his own Praetorian prefect. And here's what should make you deeply uncomfortable. This wasn't unusual. The institution designed to be the ultimate protector of the emperor became their most efficient executioner. It was a terrifying pattern of control. The Praetorian Guard was a political machine, a kingmaker and a kingbreaker, ensuring that no matter who wore the purple, their own power and wealth remained secure. It was a corporation of soldiers who had discovered their CEO was a liability and arranged for his violent termination. But even this is not the full story. The Praetorians were the instrument, but they were not the hand that guided it. There is one more group in this story. You haven't heard their name enough yet. You should have. The next section will reveal the true puppet masters behind these emperors' reigns and their ultimate downfall. The hand that guided the instrument belonged to the Roman Senate. What you now understand, and what most people never will, is that this wasn't about the madness of 4 emperors at all. It was about the calculated cowardice of 400 senators. They were the ones who voted to deify dead emperors, turning flawed men into gods. They were the ones who sat in stony silence as Caligula mocked them, as he made his horse a consul designate, an act designed specifically to show them that his horse was more valuable than any of them. They were the ones who averted their eyes when Nero murdered his own mother and then sent him messages of congratulation for surviving her treason. They were the ones who rose to their feet and gave a standing ovation as Commodus, their emperor, butchered crippled men in the arena for sport. With every act of complicity, they handed over another piece of their power, another shred of their dignity, until there was nothing left. The official story is that they were powerless, terrified victims, but the truth is they were collaborators. They could have declared Nero a public enemy years before they finally did. They could have refused to legitimize Commodus's divine pretensions. They never acted, not until the Praetorian Guard had already made the decision for them. Why? Because, for the majority of them, a monstrous emperor was better than a civil war. A tyrant who killed a few of their colleagues was a manageable risk. A power vacuum that could destroy their fortunes was not. The cruelty of these emperors was not an unfortunate side effect of their madness. It was a political tool. It kept the Senate, their only real rival for power, paralyzed by fear. The system wasn't broken. It was grotesquely functional. The emperor provided the terror, and the Senate provided the legitimacy. And you see this exact same pattern today in any organization where people with power and influence choose to remain silent in the face of corruption because speaking up would threaten their own comfort, their own position. It is the quiet, unspoken bargain that allows monsters to flourish. And the part nobody could explain came next. So we return to the question that has been sitting with you this entire time. How does a man become a monster? The answer, the one that history tries to obscure with diagnoses of madness and megalomania, is that he doesn't. He is simply placed on a stage, given a script with no lines, and told that the applause will never stop, no matter what he does. The answer to the question you've been sitting with this entire video is this. Absolute power is not a force that corrupts a man. It is a solvent. It dissolves everything that makes him human. Empathy, restraint, shame, connection, until only a single screaming nerve of pure ego remains. It burns away the we and leaves only the I. Caligula, Nero, Commodus, they were not insane. They were simply terrifyingly free. Free from consequence, free from judgment, free from the social contract that binds the rest of us. And the part of you that understands this, the part that has felt a flicker of satisfaction at a rival's failure or a surge of righteousness when you get your way, is the part that knows that every human being has a line they would not cross. These men were just the first in history to have no one and nothing left to draw it for them. We are back in Nero's garden, under a bruised purple sky. The party is over. The laughter has faded. The only thing you can hear is the low hiss and sputter of the human torches as they burn down to blackened bone. And the only thing you can smell is the cold ash on the wind. That garden is gone, buried under the city you now see in ruins. But the principle that lit it is not. Every time a leader is treated as infallible, every time an institution demands loyalty over morality, a new garden is being planted. The torches just look different today. Power doesn't create monsters. It only reveals the ones that were already there, waiting. And the most unsettling question isn't whether you would become Caligula or Nero if you were on the throne. It's whether, if you were in the crowd, you would be one of the ones who learned to applaud on cue. Tell me in the comments, which part of this stayed with you?